Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Inquiring Minds. I'm Steve Harper, and with me, as always, is the amazing, illustrious co-host Donna Carlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm so looking forward to this call as usual, but I get pumped just knowing that we're going to be discussing something, which is kind of cool place to be.
It, it is a cool place to be. I had someone tell me that they always appreciated the fact that when we introduce these things, we show up and we're authentic, and we seem very interested in what we're about to talk about, and I love that because it means we've got people paying attention and we're making a difference. So, what are we talking about today?
You have to let go of things that stop you from growing. And, people automatically think of, roadblocks, things that you're comfortable with, and you use them to protect you, or assumptions. There's all kinds of things. You could,
Sure.
look at things from many different viewpoints. I'm also looking at that which has made you successful. Because sometimes, if you don't let go of past victories, I'm not saying not to celebrate them and build on them, but sometimes we rest on our laurels.
Yeah.
And we don't grow if we keep doing what we always did. We might get a little bit more masterful at it or whatever else. We don't grow, we don't learn when we stick to what is comfortable, what we know. So, how could you let go of that which is almost automatic, right?
Yeah.
That is really stopping you from growing and being edgy enough to make you sit up and pay attention.
Well, this is really a relevant topic because I had a discovery call yesterday with a potential coaching client that has been a fan of my work for a long time, and we knew each other through a different business affiliation at one point, and he'd never really considered a coaching relationship until recently. He's kind of hit a wall with his business, and he's got some frustrations. And what I realized during that conversation was exactly this. He was resting on the successes that he's had with this organization that he's built and had a lot of success with up to this point, and where he kind of thought that he needed to address, or what he kind of assumed he needed to address, was so counter opposite from what he really wanted to talk about. And really, which is, he kind of feels stuck right now, and there's a little bit of fear about taking this next step and moving in a different direction with the business, which means there is both a positive and a negative in his mindset. He's going to have to add people, which scares him because the economy is a little bit challenging for his particular vertical. But at the same time, he also knows that that's the only way he's going to grow. But he's comfortable in where he is right now because it's predictable and it's been successful up to this point. So then there's this tug of war in his mind about why should I change? Why should I adapt and do anything different? And so this is kind of an ideal conversation based on the heels of that conversation, because at the end of the day, where he thought he really expected our conversation to go kind of took this complete detour, because I started asking questions about what does that business look like in 3 years and 5 years, and how much emphasis and effort does he want to be putting into it versus how much he wants to abdicate and delegate some of the authority and responsibility for that growth to other people. And there were conversations, it was a conversation that he hadn't anticipated because he wasn't really looking at the long range picture. Even though he's dreaming about it, he's not really taking the necessary actions to make that a reality. And when you really got down to it, it comes down to, the fear of how much more effort that would take versus, that comfortable suit of, same old, and,
Mm.
predictability, yet still frustrated. You're not making more money, you're not growing, to the point where eventually as the owner, you could potentially extricate yourself from having to be involved day to day, which is, it came about was very much a high priority for him.
Isn't that amazing when those
Yeah.
conversations just reveal something that is so profound, and you sort of go, why didn't I consider that before?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what a coach does.
Yep.
That helps you have those awareness moments and those aha moments saying, why didn't I think of that before? That's because you're viewing something through the same lens over and over and over again, which is actually natural behavior. What you're doing is expanding that and sharing different paradigms with the individual. And it's paradoxical in a way because you're
Yeah.
going, look at it from this way and look at it from
Yeah.
this way. Whoa, you know? And so what do you have to let go of? That's the hard part, right?
Well,
Is
well,
to
and I think that
identify.
to your point, right? The letting go is the big factor because where you, I think a lot of times we achieve a goal or we attain a certain level of success, and then like you sort of alluded to, we get a little bit complacent, and we think about what a little bit more effort might be, or that next level of whatever success might mean to us, and we get and I think it's a natural human tendency to get a little bit concerned, fearful of what that will take, or, well, how committed am I to the next whatever, right? The next effort that I need to put forward when this kind of feels good and it took me so long to get here, I should enjoy it. And I think, as we were sort of talking about this topic off camera, right? At the end of the day, we're not suggesting that you don't appreciate what you've accomplished up to this point, but at the same time, you know, it's not the end game, right? It's not really where where you should call that your final act, unless that's, of course, it is your final act, and you've achieved it, and you're ready to move on, do something completely different. But I think a lot of times people have a tendency to just like all that work and all that effort, they feel like they just can't give out anymore. I was talking to a friend of mine whose son, it's amazing to me the types of mile times that people are running these days in terms of athletics. I mean, I remember Roger Bannister's, 4 minute mile was like, oh my God, that'll never be broken. And now you have people that are running, sub 4 minute miles, right? And I was talking to him about his son, and his son, works so hard to get in between that 4 and 4:30 mark, which was their requirement for his high school track team. And that was just the minimum in order for you to make the team. And he worked all year to get to that and finally achieved it. And then his dad put the goal on the table. Well, what are you going to do to get to 3:58? How do you get there? And he couldn't get his head around it because it's like, oh my God, it took me a year to get there. And he said, but look at everything that you've learned and everything that you've adapted to be able to get. You're better than what the minimum is. What could you do if you pushed yourself just a little bit harder? And he ends up coming in at like 385 or something like that. Like he kind of blew even his own expectations. But had he been left to his own devices, my friend said, I'm pretty sure he never would have attempted to dip below the 4 minute mark, because for all intents and purposes, the effort was, hey, he only needed to get to a certain level. So that was good enough. But he wanted to kind of challenge him to challenge himself. But that contemplation was really not, it was certainly not something he would have done on his own without a little nudge. And that's kind of a coach, right? Exactly kind of that approach that we take.
Yeah, it's like adding little bits and taking little bits away and seeing, what emerges. It's um it's just a fantastic process just watching this unfold.
Yeah.
To see, I let go of something which frees up space, time, energy to adapt to something else.
Yep.
It's so funny. Somebody said to me, "So what's next in your career?" Because I was just interviewed for a book. I'm going, for crying out loud, it's 40 years next month that I'm doing this work. What's next? Seriously? So they just started laughing. I said, to tell you the truth, I've never had a business plan, ever. I see a need and something that I want to be doing, and I fill in the blanks as to what I need to do to ramp up to get the education, the know-how, the tools in order to do that piece of work. And so it continues to morph. It's not like I've done exactly the same work for 40 years. That's not the point. I know that it's like this ebb and flow. I let go of something, like I let go of my school. I took on 2 more fellowship programs. So there you go. It's not like I'm doing less. We'll talk about that another time. It's that I'm doing different.
Sure.
And again, like at my age, at the point of my career, I look at doing different, letting go of that which depletes me and replacing it with things that pump me up. I'm working probably more hours than I did 5 years ago, and I have more energy because I'm choosing the right fit for me to help me continue to grow and learn. Because some of these fellowship programs asked me like a year ago, did I know anything about the film industry? No. I'm working with leaders in the film industry right now. And because people stuff is constant across industry, and I'm learning at the same time. So, again, what do you have to let go of? That comfort level is what you rely on. And if you didn't, like you had it to rely on, it's always a good fallback. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a fallback because people are going to get panicky and I don't want that. However, what is a dream that you've had, like something that gave you so much joy when you did that in your work? How do you let go of something so that you could fill it more with that which fills you up? And I think that that's a great conversation for us all to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Although I'll challenge you on one thing that I think is kind of
Uh-oh.
interesting was your response to, how you started with the response was, look, I've had 40 years, for crying out loud. What else? That was the immediate knee jerk reaction, which is kind of the knee jerk reaction for, a lot of our clients. Like, what else could I possibly do? But then as you processed it and you started thinking and sort of reacquainting relative to what you're working on now versus what you were 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, you start realizing, look, I'm checking a lot of boxes for me personally, but the person that asked the question may not have actually heard that. Because at the end of the day, you were like, God, what else do you want from me? I have 40 years of this, doing this. What else is
Oh,
there? And
yeah, that wasn't the intention.
yeah,
The
of
intention
course.
was in me clarifying it was I've done 40 years of multiple things,
Yeah.
which came out in the interview, like starting in healthcare
Yep.
and how it morphed regularly to where I am now. And so that's constantly letting go of in order to embrace something else. So it's not purposeful, it's automatic. That's how I live my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until I was asked the question. A lot
I
of my
just thought it was an
clients,
interesting response, right? Because at
like
the end of the
40
day, it's
years of,
kind of like the same thing
twisted
we're
Jake.
talking about with clients. What else
Yeah,
do you
I was
want from me?
yeah, I was joking with her saying maybe nothing, like
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
less and less and less is letting go of until I shrink it down to having it just, time to I'm never going to retire, but
Yep.
semi-retirement, whatever you want to call it, next chapter, I whatever. It's
Yeah.
it's integrated into my life, constant change and letting go of.
Yeah.
For most people, they have to learn to strengthen that muscle. And some who might be listening to us, when they hear this call, are saying, I never even considered letting go of something. All my life, I trained to do this, and I've done this my whole career. I
Yeah.
never thought of what do I have to let go of to continue to grow.
Yeah.
Think about it. Yeah. And it could be depressing. So be gentle with yourself.
Yeah. Well, I kind of have adopted sort of an acronym, MBC, right? Never be complacent. You always be evolving, always be growing, always be learning. And, I think the most interesting, most fulfilled individuals I know are always coming to every conversation or every dinner party or every, happy hour with something that they have learned that they didn't know before, or an experience that they never thought they would take, but they took it, and how it is informing how they're conducting themselves in their personal life and their professional life. And I think that that's a key factor. I think so. Never being complacent, and then, like you said, having our audience evaluate where are you right now, and really where else do you want to go, and how hard are you going to push yourself to do that. Don't just rest on your laurels. Don't just sit, on this success that you've had, professionally or otherwise. Continue to push yourself to evolve, to adapt, to learn more, and to grow. Because when you do that, it is one of the most rewarding experiences ever. And, they talk about people that retire, like you said, you'll never retire. I will never retire. Why? Because I never want to have my days be on, rinse and repeat. I always want something different. And I don't want to, I think the worst, I had the benefit of watching both sets of my grandparents in their retirement years as a young person, and just how mind numbingly boring their lives were, because it was, watching the news, game shows in the morning, the midday news or programs or soap operas or whatever, and then naps in the afternoon, dinner, go to bed, get up, do the exact same thing. And the only variety that they might have is the weekday programming versus the weekend programming. And to me, that is a fate worse than death. I just can't do
Wow.
it.
Yeah.
But to grow and expand and adapt and continually improve your life in some way is something that doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of resources. It just takes the desire. And the beautiful thing about it is, even if you are in those, later years of your life, there are so many books at your local library you could never possibly get through. You could read them, all day long every day, and you'll still not get through it. But just picking up, the new skills and abilities. I was at my library a few months back, and there was, someone in their probably late 70s, and he's reading a book on Photoshop because he loves photos and he loves taking pictures, and now he has a smartphone, but he wants to learn the nuances of that, not because he's going to do it as a career, not because he's got some big project, but because he has an interest in it. And I think that was
Yeah.
so amazing. It's such a critical lesson. And so I just think that there's just so much in so much to that. And I think that's true even for those of us that are in our careers now. You may be so hyper focused on what you're doing that you live and breathe it professionally. And at some point that just, you burn out and you have to, put new stuff in. I think that's why we get the response we do to this podcast, is because we're constantly challenging people to think differently, to ask deeper questions, to
Yeah.
look at things from a perspective they probably never thought of. And that's what we're trying to do, is kind of nudge that forward or stimulate that in some capacity. And it's just so critical.
It's really interesting. I'm a coach psych, as you know, so it's executive coaching is human systems, organizational psychology is organizational systems, and something bothered me. There was a missing piece for me, and that was the behavior within an organization, how
Yeah.
it behaves as an entity, and treats its people. And we could talk about that till the cows come home. And I'm saying to myself, I need to know more about that. So I actually enrolled in a master's program in organizational behavioral studies, and I was so excited about this course, and then paper after paper after paper after case study. I'm going, just shoot me now, because my practice was just so busy. I was in Manly Beach outside of um, Sydney, Australia, doing a keynote, and did the keynote. I get into the shuttle bus to go back to the airport with somebody else who was a speaker at the conference, and I said, "Oh my God, it's deadline today for my final paper, and I'm going to be on a plane like for 27 hours going back to Canada, and I haven't submitted yet." And he looked at me. He said, "Are you out of your mind? You're the teacher. Why in the hell are you taking another program?" So I said to him, "Because there's a missing piece for me, and I want to be able to address all of this when I go into an organization." So then he said, "Remember, you're not the teacher, you're the student. Write the paper accordingly." And I said to him, "I'm going to do both,
Yep.
because in my case study, I'm going to talk about the work I've done from the perspective of what the teacher has taught me. It's the first time, and I'm not saying this to brag, it's the first time I ever got 100% in a course."
That's
And he
awesome.
said he's never seen a paper that showed a 360 viewpoint. He said that shows me that learning multiple perspectives um, of the same situation, of the same case, really brings an entirely different perspective to the solutions that you created. And I said, that's exactly right. So I invite people to grow. Don't keep learning in your field.
Yeah.
Learn in an area that complements your field so you're stronger in your field.
Yep.
And that will keep you growing constantly. That was an invaluable exercise for me to do, and really gave me so much more meat, to address something.
That's excellent advice for sure. I really, I love that. Well, we could, like you said, we could talk about various aspects of this till the cows come home, and we probably would if we didn't have try to keep these episodes short. So, Donna, we would love to, share with our audience how people can give their impressions of this episode, if they have comments or they want to expand upon anything that we talked about, or engage us in any kind of dialogue relative to this episode, or suggestions on maybe future topics they'd like us to cover. How can they do that?
Join our Facebook group, which is probably the easiest way. We have all our YouTube videos posted on there as well. Share your 3 cents. And let us know what you want us to discuss that we haven't, tackled yet. Or go to our website, steves at ribblescentral.com. I'm at Donna Carlin with a K.com. And, just write us directly. We're also on all the podcast platforms pretty much. And it's also a great place for you to comment and let us know how we're doing, because we'd love to hear from you and we'd love for you to join the conversation.
Absolutely. We would very much. Well, this has been yet another interesting conversation. Hopefully, you take this out, whether you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms or you're tuning into our YouTube or our Facebook and you're seeing the video. We hope that this is something that gets you thinking, maybe taking a deeper look, maybe starting a conversation with a trusted friend or ally or family member, and just seeing where this conversation can go, because it's a topic that I think is really important. And, like I said, don't be complacent. So never be complacent if you can avoid it, and continue to grow and evolve when and where you can. So excellent, excellent episode, Donna. I appreciate this. We'll be back again very soon with another episode of Inquiring Minds. But until then, Donna, have a great day.
You too.